All right, and we are live again. So this story just came out today. Looks like the gloves are off now that Boris Johnson and other higher-ups in the UK government are getting infected with the coronavirus. They are tired of being scared, tired of placating to the Chinese government, and they are being honest. I've heard rumors of this where many governments knew that China was lying a lot and knew that the estimates were unbelievably off, but all of them were too scared to publicly come forward and say actual estimates of how bad the lies were. So we finally got a government brave enough to speak out and say that 15 times to 40 times more people were infected in China with the coronavirus than the Chinese government is officially claiming. And that is based on their research, their intelligence. The article goes into it, but if you don't want to run the numbers, I ran the numbers for you. That would be between 1.2 million people and 3.2 million people if it's 40x, and China's lying about the 40x numbers. So 3.2 million people, a lot more than the flu, bro. This thing was an unbelievable pandemic. Congress here in the United States was briefed on it at the end of January, first week of February. I was watching on C-SPAN, recorded, that was put on YouTube, congressional testimony from experts that this thing was going to get out of control. Congress was briefed even before that at the end of January 2020, and I think it was January 24th. It was security clearance level meetings. And we're just getting articles that are coming out in the last couple weeks that a lot of congressmen, Republicans, and Democrats both started to dump massive amounts of their shares after the briefings. The New York Post and others have tons and tons of coverage. Both sides of the aisle, both equal scumbags, I would say. Meanwhile, President Trump did State of the Union, how great the U.S. economy was. We had in New Orleans, we had the Mardi Gras Festival. Obviously, it was all about the dollars. Now New Orleans has unbelievably rapid amounts of coronavirus infections. So, and on top of this, to add insult to injury, governments are also too scared to criticize China about this. China stole almost all, confiscated. They did pay 3M and other companies for them, the N95 masks and other PPE equipment, and yet China still had shortages. So China confiscated over the last 3 months. Not only were they lying to all of us about the amount of people infected, they also confiscated almost all the PPE equipment and the N95 masks in the last 3 months, and they still had shortages of these things in China. And so people are wondering why governments like the United States and others did not stockpile masks, did not stockpile PPE equipment. There is the truth. China had almost all of it and still had shortages. That's how bad things are. That's why these governments here in the West are lying to people, although now it's starting to change a little bit, that the people don't need masks. Healthy people don't need masks because they want the doctors and the nurses, also the political elites and economic elites to have first shot at those things. Yep, all governments lie. This is a mess. We have more evidence about the urns that have come out in the last couple days. Radio Free Asia, U.S. State Department adds that since the start of last week. So there's been a number of Chinese publications like Caixin and others that have covered this, the amount of urns in Wuhan. Yes, tens of thousands of urns, way more urns were delivered than the official, let's see here, the official Chinese numbers are that only 3,300 had died in China during the coronavirus, and that only 81,439 have been infected. China is only claiming that there's like 20 people, 30 people, 40 new people getting infected. Hearing a lot of stories of people in factories getting back to work, and then these are places outside of Wuhan, and the infection is spreading again. So the UK government is the first government to publicly put a number on how big the lies the Chinese government has. From what I've heard now for 2 months, the other governments knew that China was lying incredibly, but everyone was too scared to actually put a number publicly and publicly criticize China. Well, now that so many in the UK government, including Boris Johnson, are infected with the coronavirus, the gloves are off. There is no holds barred. They are letting them have it. And props to them. Now, there's going to be blowback. There's going to be a lot of blowback, but apparently they're trying to get out of their Huawei contract too for 5G. All these governments screwed up, man. All these governments screwed up. But the biggest screw up was the Chinese government, because they let this thing get to, if these numbers are true, they let it get to at least 1 million people infected before they even cared to do anything. And then they let all those people go all over the world, and it was already too late. But yes, there's plenty of blame to go around. I wish more governments would speak out against the Chinese government, but most of them are too scared. Most of them are on the Chinese government payroll. Same thing with a lot of people in the Western media here, who actually prefer what the Chinese government has been doing with the coronavirus now for the last month or so. Okay, let me get into this article more. Oh, also, a lot of companies now announced, including in iPhone supply chain, that they're going to be leaving China. I'll cover that on another show. There's a number of articles about that. So Boris Johnson's government is reportedly furious with China and believes it could have 40 times more coronavirus cases than it claims. This is by Ali Song of Reuters and also Adam Payne at Business Insider from today, March 29th. UK government officials say there will be a reckoning for China over its handling of the coronavirus. Boris Johnson's government is reportedly furious with the Chinese state. It has accused China of, there's bad grammar in the article, of spreading disinformation and lying about the number of cases it has. Scientists have reportedly warned Johnson that China could have up to 40 times more cases than it says. It could prompt the prime minister to abandon his deal with Chinese telecom giant Huawei. Boris Johnson's government is reportedly furious, and if you're not familiar, Boris Johnson has the coronavirus now too, along with many other people inside the higher-ups in the UK government, furious with China's handling of the coronavirus, with UK officials quoted on Sunday warning that Beijing faces a reckoning once the COVID-19 crisis is over. UK government officials believe China is spreading disinformation about the severity of the coronavirus outbreak in its country for months now. The Daily Mail in the UK on Sunday reports. The newspaper says scientists have warned Johnson that China could have downplayed its number of confirmed cases of the coronavirus by a factor of 15 to 40 times. China has reported just 81,439 at the time of the writing of the article. Officials also believe China is trying to expand its economic power through offering help to other countries and medical equipment, which they were confiscating for months, trying to combat the virus. So this is the old government adage from Rahm Emanuel, don't let a good crisis go to waste. China's trying to get more governments over the barrel. We'll give you help. We'll give you medical equipment if you agree to letting Huawei handle your 5G, if you agree to signing over your natural resource rights now. Some of this has been going on for many, many years now, but my guess is China thinks that they have even more of these governments and countries over the barrel now because they can offer them medical equipment to help fight the coronavirus. So this is like, blackmail, government level blackmail. Newspaper quoted 3 UK officials who all reported fury with Johnson's government. One said it is going to be back to the diplomatic drawing board after this. Rethink is an understatement, probably because those officials are on the Chinese Communist Party payroll. The second unnamed official said there has to be a reckoning when this is over, while the third said the anger goes right to the top. The newspaper adds that Boris Johnson's government is so angry with China's mishandling of the crisis that the prime minister could abandon his previous decision to let China's telecom company Huawei develop the United Kingdom's 5G network. Johnson angered his main ally, President Trump, by giving Huawei a limited but significant role in improving the country's infrastructure. The Trump administration was angered by the decision, with the president himself reportedly expressing disapproval before hanging up in an apologetic phone call with Johnson last month. The decision also riled swaths of ministers in Parliament in Johnson's own Conservative Party. One cabinet minister quoted by the Daily Mail on Sunday said, "We can't stand by and allow the Chinese state's desire for secrecy to ruin the world's economy and then come back like nothing has happened." Quote, "We're allowing companies like Huawei not just into our economy, but to be a crucial part of our infrastructure. This needs to be reviewed urgently, as does any strategically important infrastructure that relies on Chinese supply chains." So this could potentially, all of this, China lying and all the problems I just discussed in the last few minutes, could blow back and really backfire on China. I think they're going to end up losing over the next few years. They're going to lose a lot of their manufacturing. I've heard from sources that a lot of Chinese manufacturers even want to leave themselves. They're even fed up with the Chinese government. But there are stories I have out about iPhone suppliers and the iPhone supply chain wanting out of China and others. They'll be linked in the information and description section. I'm going to keep this video short. So we actually have a number. I've heard this in a number of different places off the record now for well over a month, probably around 2 months, that the level of lies and propaganda were egregious. So we had a global pandemic in China. China lied, and now all these other governments are duplicitous. They've covered it up. Finally, one speaks out. And then there's more evidence China is lying. Number of urns, more than double reported coronavirus deaths. China has been caught lying once again about coronavirus figures, with the latest evidence coming from Ground Zero in Wuhan, where according to official Chinese Communist Party data, just 50,006 people were infected with COVID-19 and only 2,535 dying of the virus. Probably more than that died in one day. That's the official numbers, though. Yet, Chinese investigative outlet Caixin revealed that when mortuaries opened back up this week, photos revealed a far greater number of urns than reported deaths. In one, a truck loaded with 2,500 urns can be seen arriving to the Hankou mortuary. According to the report, the driver said he had delivered the same amount the previous day. In another photo, 7 500 urn stacks can be seen inside the mortuary, adding up to 3,500 deaths, which is more than the total amount the entire country of China claims to have had with the coronavirus. So the numbers are completely and totally phony. They had a global pandemic, way worse than the flu, months ago. Starting, I'm hearing second waves, but they're smaller, outside of Wuhan. From multiple financial industry contacts, fashion industry, manufacturing there, factories, heard a number of different other stories. China just, also I covered this in the last couple days, the China, after planning to reopen the movie theaters, they actually just reclosed them. They're closing all their movie theaters again. They don't want mass gatherings. This adds up to more than double the amount of reported deaths in the region, for which grieving family members waited in line for as long as 5 hours to collect. According to Shanghaiist, the publication Shanghaiist, urns are reportedly being distributed at a rate of 500 a day at the mortuary until the Tomb Sweeping Day holiday, which falls on April 4th of this year. Wuhan has 7 mortuaries, which my source that was trapped inside Wuhan with their forced quarantine for over 50 days confirmed to me as well. I've been talking about that for months. If they are all sticking to the same schedule, this adds up to more than 40,000 urns being distributed in the city over the next 10 days. When reporters at Bloomberg made calls to the funeral homes to check on the number of urns waiting to be collected, the mortuary said that they either did not have that data or were not authorized to disclose it. Given the constant provable lies, does anyone believe that China has actually contained the coronavirus? I think they've gotten it down somewhat, but their economy has been decimated. A lot of Chinese companies were not getting bailouts. That's why oil was dumped back onto the market. So many Chinese companies ran out of cash or were close to running out of cash, so they were ordered to restart. And predictably, with mass gatherings of people at a factory, you're going to have outbreaks again. Although what I've only heard so far is the outbreaks are small. They're still contained, that's what I've heard. And of course, as former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer pointed out, implicitly don't expect the mainstream media to question anything. Unfortunately, this is about as accurate as anecdotal evidence as we're ever going to get out of China. We're probably never going to get the real numbers out of China or the truth. The U.S. government was also covering up the amount infected for at least a month. Dr. Ben Hunt at Epsilon Theory calls it, don't test, don't tell. There's a hashtag. So for over a month now, there was tons of people that were getting sick with the coronavirus here in the U.S. with severe pneumonia or influenza B. I was having people contact me all over the United States from different areas in California, Washington, Iowa, Arkansas, Kansas, elsewhere, that they were also sick. So governments have done a really, really poor job, but the worst job of all, again, in my opinion, goes to the Chinese government. Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. Please hit the like button. Have almost 400 people watching here. Going to keep this stream very short. If you want to read more about this, the articles will be in the information and description section. I am really surprised that any government was willing to come out and put a number on the lies that the Chinese government has given. Because the blowback, the retaliation is going to be enormous from the Chinese government. The retaliation is going to be absolutely enormous. You're going to see the Chinese government threaten to dump all their investments in England, no more trade deals. You're going to see just enormous economic consequences for the UK government with this article. The blowback's going to be enormous. The revenge and retaliation is going to be enormous. China does not play nice. Okay, so all the articles will be in the information and description section. Just wanted to keep this short. Props to the United Kingdom government for having the balls to speak out. This is real cojones right here. I wish more governments would be willing to do this. But unfortunately, many governments are just the Chinese government's going to take advantage of this crisis. They're going to get even better trade deals, even better economic deals. I'm hearing they have more African countries over the barrel. They're going to have more European countries in the European Union over the barrel. It doesn't sound like the United Kingdom's going to be one of those, but we'll see. Maybe they'll cave, though, after Boris Johnson's his government is voted out. We'll have to see what happens. But yes, the Chinese government is trying to take advantage of this crisis financially. Okay, great super chat from JB Weld. JB, are you a Patreon account contributor yet? You always step up with the super chat, so thank you. He says, so no one is talking about this. Actually, I've been warning about municipal bond problems for a while, but yes, now things are exacerbated with the economic activity collapsing here in the U.S. and business activity collapsing. Real estate properties will probably start to fall. He says this is a massive hole in the budgets of cities, municipalities, and states. Do I think municipal bonds will default? I think the Federal Reserve will step in. The Federal Reserve already announced that they're going to start buying municipal bonds. Danielle DiMartino, I did a show on this. Danielle DiMartino Booth disclosed that inside a Federal Reserve meeting in 2008, 2009, they did discuss buying municipal bonds, but they said they were worried the dollar would violently react and be devalued quickly and people would panic and it would be too inflationary. But here we are now, a little over 10 years later, and they are buying municipal bonds. We may never get the real number. There is no independent Federal Reserve audits. In theory, the Federal Reserve can buy all the municipal bonds. This would have tremendous consequences for the dollar. I suspect the Fed is already starting to buy them. They announced they would. We have no data. We may never find out the exact number. The Fed may be buying already hundreds of billions or trillions of municipal bonds. The Fed is the buyer of last resort. So any toxic garbage, anything that's going bad, leverage loans, collateralized loan obligations, investment grade bonds that are downgraded that turn into junk bonds, high yield debt or junk bonds, municipal bonds, tons of other things the Fed can buy and give pension funds or hedge funds 100 cents on the dollar for stuff that might not even be worth 10 cents on the dollar anymore. And people are desperate. So, people want checks from the Fed. We have MMT QE coming probably in 3 weeks. Supposedly there's going to be direct deposits. That may get some velocity of money up on some consumer goods. George Gammon has been saying worse stagflation. I've been talking about stagflate and tax and lie. I'm not really sure how much they can actually tax at this point because there's no real economic activity right now. So the tax is going to be the inflation tax, purchasing power on the dollar. That's going to be the hidden stealth tax for now. So there will probably be a lot worse stagflation coming because if people get those checks, they're going to probably not pay off debt. They're probably going to spend it on rent and food and maybe medications, prescriptions. We'll see. Again, this is a mess. All governments have screwed up. All governments have lied. Different degrees of propaganda from all governments. I've read articles, tons of them, about the leaked plans over a month ago for many governments that were planning on, these tents for people who are sick to put them in cots. But the worst mistake here goes to the Chinese government. Okay, there was at least, according to the estimates now from the United Kingdom, at least 1.2 million people were infected. And they let those people, go all over China, infect other people, and then fly all over the world. And of course, these other governments are slow. By the time these other governments figured out what had happened, it was basically already too late. Dr. Gaurav Kumar says boycott China. I think what's going to happen, even if people don't boycott China, is these companies in the global supply chain and manufacturing are already going to be leaving China in the next year or two. I'm seeing a lot of stories. I'll do a separate show on this. I have the articles now. They will be in the information and description section below this video. Okay, everyone, I want to thank everyone for listening. This was just a short update. I have a lot of great content, information, research, and financial education for free on my YouTube channel and also behind the Patreon account paywall. I think things are going to be crazy now for a while going forward. It is the new normal. It's going to be nuts. The Fed and the other central banks are the buyers of last resort at this point, and look how quickly Republicans caved for MMT-QE after spending the last couple years telling people they wouldn't. Both political parties suck, man. And then, of course, those assholes dumped all their shares, too. Well, not all their shares, but a lot of them dumped millions of their shares at the end of January, early February, before the truth started to get out here in the U.S. and the stock markets crashed. This was predictable 2 months ago. If you're new to my channel, I was warning people about this in mid to late January. I was hearing a lot of reports from my friend trapped inside of Wuhan. The travel restrictions started to worry me. I was warning people about a collapse in the oil market 2 months ago. I was bearish oil before that, but I was really worried 2 months ago that things were getting out of hand and that we could have a total collapse in the oil market. The airlines I was warning people about, the airline stocks did not collapse initially. The airline stocks were only down 10% at one point at the end of January, I believe. So they had not priced in any of this bad news. And then here they are with enormous amounts of bailouts. Welcome to dystopia. All governments suck. Some of them suck more than others. Some of them lie more than others. Some of them cheat more than others. Some of them steal more than others.